Stars, they said, were cold and distant things, like the eyes of generals or the gaze of the alien warrior woman who stood at the prow of the eclipse. She didn't think much of that comparison. She'd stared down black holes and watched them blink first. But tonight, beneath the bruised purple glow of a nearby nebula, she felt something in her chest she couldn't name. Maybe it was because she'd spotted him again, human, short, and smirking, like he knew some secret no one else did. The same smirk that had gotten him demoted twice, if the ship's gossips were to be believed. He was leaning against the bulkhead, arms crossed, uniform half undone, like the concept of regulation didn't apply to him. She considered vaporizing him with a flick of her finger, just for the sheer cosmic fun of it. But then he looked up and grinned. "Hey, Star Lady," he drawled, like they were old drinking buddies. "You're in my light." His voice carried the easy confidence of a man who had never faced her in combat, and probably didn't plan to. She considered a dozen responses, most involving violence, or at the very least, a witty retort. But the ridiculousness of the situation made her lips twitch. "Your light?" she asked, one brow arched. "You're standing under a defective maintenance lamp." He shrugged, and the gesture was so human, so casual, it nearly disarmed her. "Well, maybe I'm defective too," he said, with a grin that threatened to crack the solemn atmosphere. "Lucky for you, huh?" She snorted. The sound startled even her. A warrior queen snorting like a cadet. She'd been trained to inspire fear, not laughter. Yet here he was, defying every protocol and expectation, and making it look like the easiest thing in the galaxy. Down the corridor, a maintenance drone scuttled by on 6 legs, a pair of laser torches for eyes. "Hey, Unit 9, the human called, waving like an idiot. The drone beeped a confused greeting before zooming away, sparks flying. "Nice guy," he commented, nodding after it. "Wouldn't share his oil ration with me last time, though." She rolled her eyes. "That's because he's a drone." "Details," he waved off, as if sharing rations with a maintenance bot were a perfectly reasonable plan. "Anyway," he went on, suddenly serious, "I've been meaning to ask, why'd you pick this backwater star cluster? I mean, you're an alien warrior queen. Shouldn't you be conquering some more glamorous place? Like the Nebulae Lounge or, I don't know, the entire planet of Glitzia?" She felt her chest tighten, but not in the way it usually did before battle. "I like the quiet," she said at last, though it sounded like a lie even to her own ears. He didn't press. Instead, he gave her that lopsided grin again, the one that always made her want to break his nose, and maybe his ribs, just to see if it would stop him from smiling. "Well, I guess even queens need a vacation sometimes," he said, his tone light but his eyes watchful, like he'd seen through the mask she wore. She turned away before he could see the way her lips quirked again. The eclipse hummed around them, the stars beyond indifferent, but for the first time in a long while, the cold vacuum of space didn't feel quite so empty. She found him again, days later, hunched over a half-broken console in the maintenance bay, muttering curses in a language even the universal translator refused to handle. His hair stuck out at odd angles, and a streak of oil ran down his cheek like a warrior's stripe, though she suspected it had more to do with mechanical incompetence than battlefield valor. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorway, watching him battle the tangled mess of wires and blinking lights with all the finesse of a drunken star slug. He noticed her finally and nearly dropped his hydrospanner. "Oh, hey, Star Lady," he said, voice pitched somewhere between embarrassment and bravado. "Didn't expect royalty to slum it with the maintenance crew?" She arched an eyebrow, lips twitching at the nickname. "I'm not royalty," she said, though she'd once carried the title on 1,000 worlds. "And you look like you're about to start a small electrical fire." He glanced at the smoking console, gave a sheepish grin. "Yeah, well, that's on purpose. Keeps the AI guessing." He tapped the console as if to reassure it, though the machine beeped a warning and sparked again. "Besides, nothing wrong with a little improvisation. It's how we humans keep things interesting." "Interesting," she echoed, though she wasn't sure that was the word she'd use for the way the console was now belching smoke and humming like a dying nebula whale. She sighed. "Move," she ordered, stepping forward and nudging him aside. He didn't resist, though he made a show of wiping his hands on his trousers and standing back like a proud parent. She pulled a plasma rod from her belt, jammed it into the console's power coupler, and muttered a few choice words in her native tongue. The machine hiccuped, let out a shrill whine, and then powered down, the smoke trailing away like a sigh of defeat. She withdrew the rod and blew on it theatrically, smirking at his wide-eyed stare. "Show off," he accused, crossing his arms. "I was about to do that," she snorted. "Sure you were." A sudden laugh bubbled in her throat, surprising them both. He grinned like a star going supernova. "You know," he said, leaning in like he was about to share a universal secret, "you're a lot more fun when you're not threatening to incinerate me." She tilted her head. "And you're a lot less annoying when you're not setting the ship on fire." "Progress, then," he quipped, offering his hand. She stared at it, amused. "Friends?" he asked, his grin lopsided. She studied his outstretched hand as though it were a bomb ready to detonate. Friends. It was a human concept, so casual and yet so binding. On her homeworld, alliances were written in blood and cosmic contracts, not shared jokes and smoldering consoles. But here, in this rusty maintenance bay with the stars humming just beyond the hull, the idea didn't seem quite so alien. She took his hand, feeling the rough calluses of a man who'd fought battles she'd never seen. His grip was warm and certain. "Friends," she echoed, and for the first time in countless cycles, it felt like more than just a word. He squeezed her hand and let it go. "Don't tell the generals," he whispered conspiratorially, eyes dancing. "They'll think I'm going soft." She laughed, the sound echoing through the maintenance bay like a comet tail. "Too late," she said, and he grinned like a rogue star. They stumbled into trouble on the cargo deck, where a loose plasma conduit had transformed the place into an impromptu light show. Sparks arced across the ceiling in neon ribbons, sizzling like cosmic fireworks. He ducked with a yelp, nearly smacking his head on a crate marked explosives, handle with indifference. She barely flinched, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than concerned. "You know," he shouted over the crackle, "I'm starting to think this ship has it in for me." A plasma bolt zipped by, singeing the hem of his uniform. He danced back, waving his arms like a deranged scarecrow. "See? Personal vendetta." She rolled her eyes. "It's a conduit malfunction, not a death wish." Another spark burst overhead, showering them both in a rain of electric confetti. She sighed, plucked a device from her belt, and pressed a button. The sparks died instantly, the ship's systems whining in protest. He blinked at the sudden quiet, hands still in the air. "That's handy," he muttered, lowering his arms. "I was just about to fix it myself." She gave him a look that would have turned a star into a dwarf. "Of course you were." She thumbed the device and tucked it away. "You humans have a real talent for making everything more dramatic." "Hey, we invented soap operas," he shot back, grinning. "Drama's in our DNA." She snorted. "Explains a lot." She scanned the deck, noting the scuffed floor, the dented crates, the suspiciously absent maintenance drones. "Where's your friend Unit 9? He shrugged. "Took the day off. Something about a union meeting." She snickered despite herself. "Union meeting? For a maintenance drone?" "Hey, even bots need representation," he said, waving a hand. "Otherwise, they'll start a revolution. Next thing you know, toaster rebellion. We'd never get breakfast again." She shook her head, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "Your species is ridiculous." "And yet," he said, leaning closer, "you keep hanging around." His grin was all teeth and mischief, the kind that made her want to punch him just to shut him up. But she didn't. Instead, she found herself smiling back. "Maybe I'm studying you," she teased, "for weaknesses." He pretended to gasp. "Oh no, the big bad alien queen is going to find my weakness." He held out his arms in mock horror. "Let me guess, kittens, cupcakes, a tragic backstory involving a lost lunchbox?" She laughed, a sound that felt like it cracked something open inside her. "Definitely the lunchbox," she said, playing along. "Very tragic. Galactic repercussions." He held his heart, eyes wide. "How could you? That lunchbox had stickers." She shook her head, fighting a grin. "Come on, Drama King. Let's check the main power conduit before the next meltdown." He fell into step beside her, humming something suspiciously like an old Earth pop song. She rolled her eyes but didn't tell him to stop. Maybe in a ship full of half-broken dreams and sparking wires, a little music wasn't such a bad idea. And maybe, just maybe, this human's irreverence was exactly what she needed to keep the darkness at bay. They ended up in the med bay, though not by her choice. He'd managed to slice his hand open on a piece of jagged conduit while heroically trying to, according to him, save the galaxy. She suspected he'd tripped over his own feet. The medbot, a floating orb of judgmental whirs and blinking lights, fussed over him like an overbearing relative. She stood with her arms folded, watching the procedure with a mixture of exasperation and amusement. "Hold still, organic," the medbot intoned, its mechanical arms weaving in and out with syringes and antiseptic sprays. "Your primitive biology is disappointing." "Hey, easy on the insults," he protested, wincing as a cold jet of antiseptic hit his cut. "I'm delicate," she snorted. "You? Delicate? I've seen cosmic leeches with thicker skin." He tried to look offended, but the medbot beeped at him, and he nearly jumped out of his seat. "Ow, careful, Doc. That's my hand, not a spare part." The medbot paused dramatically. "Understood. Next time I will use a hammer." He gave her a look that said, "See what I have to deal with?" She just shook her head, stifling a laugh. "Maybe you should let the professionals handle the heroics," she teased, leaning against the wall. "Next time the ship's about to explode, I'll let you know so you can find a nice safe closet to hide in." "Funny," he muttered, though his grin betrayed him. "I'll have you know, I've saved this ship at least twice this week." "By setting it on fire," she reminded him. "Details," he said, waving his uninjured hand dismissively. "I like to keep things interesting. Besides," he added, eyes gleaming, "you'd be bored out of your mind without me." She considered that. He had a point. Between the drone revolts, the power outages, and his constant supply of half-baked heroics, she'd barely had a moment to brood properly. Maybe that was his secret weapon, a relentless, unstoppable wave of chaos that kept the darkness at bay. The medbot beeped triumphantly, retracting its tools. "Primitive repair complete," it announced. "Try not to injure yourself again. The recycling unit is already full." "Wow, thanks," he muttered, flexing his fingers experimentally. "Your bedside manner's about as warm as a black hole." The bot beeped again. "Compliment accepted." She rolled her eyes. "Let's go, hero," she said, grabbing his good hand and hauling him off the medbay table. He stumbled after her, still clutching the bandage like a badge of honor. "You know," he said as they walked down the corridor, "you're a lot more terrifying when you're worried." She gave him a sideways glance. "I wasn't worried." He grinned. "Sure you weren't." She smacked his shoulder, but the grin never left his face. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't mind so much. They stood in the docking bay, engines humming like a restless symphony of stars. He shifted from foot to foot, one hand bandaged, the other clutching a duffel bag that looked like it had been chewed by a small black hole. She tried not to look too amused. He'd insisted on carrying his own bag, though she'd offered, mockingly, to vaporize it instead. He'd refused, of course, muttering something about sentimental value and lucky charm. She suspected it was mostly filled with half-eaten rations and mismatched socks. "So, this is it, huh?" he asked, eyes scanning the bay as though he expected an army of maintenance drones to throw him a farewell party. "The grand exit," she smirked. "Don't get too emotional. I might cry." "Hey, I'm allowed to be sentimental," he retorted, grinning. "You're the one who's supposed to be the stoic alien warrior queen." She raised an eyebrow. "Supposed to be?" He shrugged. "You've been slipping lately, laughing at my jokes, smiling, snorting." He gave her a mock horrified look. "Pretty soon you'll be hugging maintenance drones and adopting stray asteroids." She fought the urge to laugh, and lost. "Don't push it," she warned, but her tone lacked its usual bite. He took a step closer, his grin softening into something more genuine. "I'm glad you found me," he said, his voice lower now, like the hum of a distant star. "Or that I found you, or whatever cosmic nonsense made this happen." She opened her mouth, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she grabbed his collar and yanked him into a kiss that was more exasperation than romance, though he didn't seem to mind. When she pulled back, he was grinning like an idiot. "See?" he breathed. "Stoic alien queen? My ass." She rolled her eyes, but there was no hiding the warmth in her chest. Shut up, she muttered. A chime echoed through the bay. Final boarding call. He shifted the bag on his shoulder, and she felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Loss, maybe, or the end of something that had never really had a name. Don't let them get you killed, she said, her voice rough. Same to you, he said, and then he was gone, boots echoing on the metal deck. She watched him go, fighting the urge to call him back, but she didn't, because he'd taught her something, about laughter, about stubbornness, about being human. She turned, heading for the bridge. The hum of the eclipse seemed different now, less like a cold machine, and more like home. She'd changed. She'd found something in the chaos, a friend, a partner, a reminder that even the strongest warriors sometimes needed someone to make them laugh. And as the stars stretched beyond the viewport, she knew she'd carry that with her, no matter how far the darkness reached.